It's a common misbelief that living on an island with beautiful beaches like this one automatically means that locals are connected with the ocean. In Puerto Rico, where this photo was taken, generations of systemic barriers and forced displacement have led to a disconnection and even fear of the ocean for many local residents. The Taino, the indigenous people of Boriquen, Puerto Rico, relied heavily on the ocean for transportation, sustenance, and cultural significance. During Columbus's second voyage, the Spaniards eliminated the Taínos' means of transportation by removing existing canoes and not allowing for new ones to be built. Militarization of the island began during this time, with the Spanish using the inlet now known as San Juan as a military outpost. In the 1900s, both the islands of Culebra and Vieques were acquired by the US Department of the Navy and used as military training complexes, resulting in the physical displacement of many residents and lasting health impacts of others due to exposure to experimental warfare. Today, unjust legislation provides tax exemptions for non-residents, incentivizing non-local businesses to relocate to Puerto Rico, driving up the cost of living, and resulting in private developments such as hotels building literal walls along what is supposed to be public coastal access. An increased frequency and intensity of storms as a result of excess greenhouse gas emissions disproportionately affects island communities. Following Hurricane Maria in 2017, it's estimated that 130,000 local residents were displaced entirely off-island. The disconnection and fear of the ocean are why community-led organizations working in marine conservation are so important. Re-empowering the local community to have control of their environment, ownership of their environment, and pride in their environment, and not be squeezed out by foreign corporate interests. Sail for Reefs bridges aquatic recreation and coral reef restoration and was looking for support in the development of educational materials to be taught to the local community through the Catholic school system. And I had the honor of joining their team for this. There are already several coral reef curricula that exist, but most of these focus on coral bleaching or other risks that these ecosystems face due to climate change. And this was a vision to create something different, something rooted in community and solution-oriented. And that leads us to the goals of this initiative, to develop a place-based curriculum. In order to do this, this included research and development, hosting a workshop to train facilitators, to administer the curriculums, creating an assessment tool to measure the effectiveness of the curriculum, and translating the materials to be available in both English and Spanish, and then piloting these materials with students. For my project, I focused on these three aspects. The research. I conducted a literature review and explored existing curricula. The development, which included tailoring activities to be solution-focused and place-based, and also making materials. And hosting the facilitator training workshop, where I was able to train educators how to administer the curriculum and also receive feedback to strengthen these materials. Today, I want to talk about the workshop where I learned the most about the community that this educational tool was made for. But first, how did I prepare for this? When I started working on this project, a driving question that we kept coming back to was how can we convince children and young people that what's happening hundreds of meters offshore impacts their lives? And how do we do so with engaged students without the doom and gloom that is so prevalent today? This question led us to focus on the ecosystem services that coral reefs provide for humans living in coastal communities. One of the most important of these services is the reefs acting as natural infrastructure to absorb wave energy, as Sid mentioned earlier. We decided to make the curriculum not about biodiversity and not about fishery habitat or any of the other amazing ecosystem services that coral reefs provide, but instead to relate it to the youth of Puerto Rico, thinking about their lived experience growing up during Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Irma, and how coral reefs are a natural protection. As waves go over the reef, the energy that they carry is dissipated and released through turbidity and also the sound of the waves crashing, decreasing the size of the wave as it approaches the coastline. The reefs act as a speed bump for the waves. Here we're looking at San Juan from one of the outer barrier reef sites, and you can see the waves crashing over the outer reef. This is especially important for communities like San Juan that have high population densities living along the coastline, and even more so during big storms that carry bigger waves with lots of energy. To develop the lesson plans, I weaved together curriculum goals with the local, national, and global curriculum standards. These standards also informed how to separate the lesson plans, and I divided them into 3 developmental ranges: kindergarten through 4th grade, 5th through 8th grade, and 9th through 12th grade. While the core message remained the same, that coral reefs act as a protection for the coast, each developmental range advanced in the level of detail and complexity. After writing the lesson plans and adapting existing activities from Science Buddies and the Central Caribbean Reef Institute, I developed materials and tested them in preparation for the workshop with the help of my 7-year-old. With access as a driving force to the creation of this program, I used readily available materials that could be found in a classroom, sourced from home, recycled, or collected outside. Here you can see my kiddo building a reef using popsicle sticks and recycled straws and bottle caps. To make the materials place-based, I focused on Puerto Rican coral reefs and printed 3D models of local species, including the brain coral, which you can see at the top, and the elkhorn coral, which is in the bottom image. And to continue with the hands-on theme, we brought some of these models to share with the audience to look at, and I'll get them back at the break. With the lesson plans developed and materials created, I was fortunate to get to spend 5 days in Puerto Rico, getting to see the San Juan Barrier Reef myself and host the facilitator training workshop. I hosted the workshop at the Sail for Reef Sailing School, where the organization takes youth on sailing classes to increase access to the water. Here you can see Antares, the co-director of Sail for Reefs, introducing me. Behind the camera is Maylene, who is the Sail for Reefs Education and Outreach Coordinator, graciously took photos of the workshop and also met with me weekly in curriculum development. And not pictured is Kike, the other co-director of Sail for Reefs, who was returning from sailing. The educators, Rosario, who teaches after-school science courses, and Sister Lissy, the delegate of the Archbishop for Ecological Pastoral Affairs, who will both be administering the curriculum. As soon as we got to our first K-4 activity, I was reminded how impactful education can be for us all, no matter what learning stage we're in. Lissy and Rosario got right out of their chairs to build coral reefs. This lesson plan focuses on the impact of waves on coastal erosion, with and without the presence of a coral reef. So here we see Lissy and Rosario building a reef using a clay base and the 3D prints of the brain coral and the elkhorn coral. Building the coral reefs together highlighted how impactful the 3D models of these local species were, as a way of captivating audiences by bringing something from the ocean into the classroom. We discussed the fragility of these 3D models, particularly with the elkhorn's branches, presenting this as something we may need to change in the future design in order to make it more suitable by handling from lots of children. But Lissy suggested keeping the models as is and using this as a teachable moment and an analogy that highlights the fragility of these ecosystems and how they need to be handled with care. So remember that if you have the elkhorn models. This type of feedback shows the importance of collaboration in education and all conservation work. As we moved to the 5th through 8th grade lesson plan, you could feel the excitement building in the room. This lesson plan looks at how waves impact varying flood zones along the coast. So first, we're looking at that impact without the presence of a coral reef. And now we see that Lissy and Rosario built another reef using the 3D models with clay as the base. And once the reef is present, we make the waves again and compare the difference in the amount of water that's going to each flood zone. And spoiler alert, it is less. Coming into this workshop, I hesitated to include the same reef building exercise for the 9th through 12th grade lesson plans, with a fear of it not being engaging enough for this developmental range. But after seeing how much fun we were all having building with the 3D models, Rosario and Lissy offered feedback on ways of how to incorporate these activities with an added level of complexity. They suggested including terrestrial ecosystems and human impacts, how sedimentation from river runoff impacts coral reefs. This allowed us to highlight more community-led organizations working in the conservation of these terrestrial ecosystems and empower students with action items on how they can reduce negative human impacts. Throughout this whole experience, their enthusiasm was the best feedback I could have hoped for. While my time with the program has come to an end, I'm excited to follow and support Sail for Reefs in the continuation of this program. During the workshop, I was able to learn about some of the ways in which Lissy plans to transform these materials to be presented through a faith-based lens, using language that's in alignment with the teachings of Catholicism. Sail for Reefs will develop an assessment tool to measure the impact of the curriculum and translate all the materials into Spanish. And Rosario said she is ready to bring these lessons into the classroom this summer. Collaborative community-based work can repair the relationship between people and place, especially for the next generation, to see that the ocean is not something scary or dangerous, but rather it is keeping us safe and providing us with opportunity and livelihood. I'm so excited to see how far this project goes within the community. There are many people who have helped me get through this journey, and I wanted to thank the entire Sail for Reefs team, Antares, Maylene, Kike, and Sean, for your generous hospitality and support through this project and my time in Puerto Rico. To the amazing educators I met along the way, Lissy and Rosario, for taking the time to meet with me and offer your insightful perspective. And to the rest of my Capstone Advisory Committee, Francis and Stuart, for your feedback and encouragement with making something so impactful. I want to thank the Julia R. Brown Fund for supporting this trip and the material development for the curriculum, and the entire MAS MBC team, especially my cohort, and a special thanks to my family, and of course, my daughter Lainey, biggest cheerleader, who tried these activities with me and has been a major support this whole year. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Well done, Savannah. It was such a pleasure being on your capstone committee, and you did an incredible job. My question's actually for your co-presenter. So I wanted, and I have a 6-year-old, so you're very brave being up there in front of everyone. You must be so proud of your mom, and I'm just curious, what makes you the most proud of what she's done here at Scripps?
Have something? No, it's okay. Are you proud of? Yeah, do you want to say it?
I'm proud of my mom going to Puerto Rico and finding all these corals.
Okay, I have a question. Yes. Congratulations, that's a beautiful project. And I can't help but think how much everyone needs that kind of education. Obviously kids, right? But I mean, I would like to make a coral reef and learn about it. So my question is, how do you see this growing, expanding, bring it to San Diego? What are you going to do with it now?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think one of the things that I was so interested about this project was the fact that it is so place-based. And I, of course, thought about home and how here we have ecosystems that serve the same protection as coastal protection with natural infrastructure of kelp forests. And I also just thought of like growing up here, and when I learned about the environment, it was usually about like the Amazon, which is very important, but didn't feel as relevant. And I didn't learn about kelp forests until I was out of elementary and high school. So I just think there's a lot of room for that, and bringing in the type of like place-based education into all communities. But yeah, that's what I see doing next, is something focused on the kelp forest or something for San Diego. Yeah.
And Savannah, you touched on this a little bit, but why is it important to include young people in marine conservation? Obviously, you have a very unique, specialized POV because you've got, your daughter, and you talked a little bit about why it's so important in this particular place. But more broadly, why do you think it's important to engage young people in marine conservation?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that young people should be included in all spaces, and I'm grateful for spaces that are accepting and provide that, like the one we're in today, allowing for children and young people to be in them. And just as a parent and as an educator, I've learned that isn't the norm in society today. And I think the theme I notice in that is that children are often burdened with the responsibility and the burden of decisions made by adults and the consequences of those decisions, and then not offered the autonomy or agency to decide how they want to move through them. And so I think that's a way that education is a very powerful tool because it can give that autonomy to them. And I also think young people have like an innate sense of justice, and that's something that we need in the conservation space and all spaces. And that simply they're going to be here longer than us, and so they will inherit the choices that are made by those before them. And so I think it's just a very big intergenerational issue that we all can work collaboratively together on, and that they need not just a seat at the table, but in some roles maybe being leaders of the conservation space.
That's great.
Thank you.